This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/intotheportal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we're back with another Film Friday.
We are indeed.
It seems like it was only yesterday we were recording last week's episode. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, the weeks are flying by. It's kind of insane. Like, it creeps up on us, and all of a sudden we're like, oh crap, like, we gotta rewatch that movie again. Like, we only have like a day.
Well, for you, I was rewatching this film this week.
Very true.
And for me, it was the very first time.
Yeah.
And we are talking about The Ruins today.
That's right. 2008 film.
Yeah, and it was directed by Carter Smith.
Yes.
Starring... Actually, we do have some continuity, right, from last week with Donnie Darko, because we have none other than Jenna Malone.
Yeah, and we didn't plan that at all. Like, that totally caught us off guard. We were, wait a second, is that the chick from Donnie Darko? Yeah. Really, it totally is. So it was very serendipitous that we ended up choosing this film.
Very interesting.
And you know what? We said we were going to start shouting people out for their film suggestions, but this was another one of those ones where it was like, I think 15 or 20 people threw it out there at the same time. So next week, we'll be narrowing it down to more specific, like if people have things to say about why they suggested the film and stuff like that. But but this one had continuity that we didn't expect from Donnie Darko, but definitely other continuity from, obviously, our Plants episode.
Yes.
Which was one of the reasons why we wanted to do it, too.
Exactly, yeah, to kind of bookend that one. But, yeah, okay, so let's get into a brief rundown here.
Sure.
So we already mentioned, it was produced 2008. Film name is The Ruins, and this basically follows, it's a very simple plot.
Yep.
Essentially, we get 4 tourists that are vacationing in sunny old Mexico.
Yep.
And in the very first scene, they are invited on this archaeological exploration, or just to take part, I guess, to go for a day. And then just make it back in time for Stuff Your Own Taco Night. So
right.
That was the gist of this film.
Essentially, yeah. But yet they still took forever to get things going, despite its simplistic sort of the way it got. You know what I mean? Like, so you've got these 4 Americans. Yeah. They're at a resort. They bump into a German fellow at the pool whose brother is on an archaeological expedition. Right. He hasn't returned yet, so he's like, well, he must be having a good time. I know where it's located, so I'm going to go check it out. Do you guys want to come with me? But it's their last day, and nobody wants to go except for the one guy, Jeff.
Well, yeah, I guess so, hey?
It's very cliche.
It is. He's basically saying, like, oh, what, are we just going to lounge around and get drunk this entire trip? Which basically everyone does that when they go to Mexico in an all-inclusive resort.
Pretty much.
He's trying to expand their scope of experience, I guess. But even his character just... Let's get into that a little bit, because characters.
Okay.
Did you love them? Did you hate them?
Well, okay, this is just funny, right? Because all the movies we've covered so far, I've really, really liked. Up until this one, basically. I didn't, that's just it. You don't get, they spend time on dialogue with these characters before you get into the meat of the story, but you don't like them anymore, nor do you get to know them anymore, really.
No.
It's just this sort of...
Yeah,
it's arbitrary dialogue.
And it's very, like we said, it's very generic in the sense that you get this interplay of, like, 2 couples, essentially. You get the one who, like, obviously, like, the hinge is that the 2 girls are best friends and that these are their boyfriends. So the boys don't even really, like, you know, they're not lifelong friends or anything.
Yeah.
So there's kind of just this weird sort of, like, superficial connection there. And it just... bothered me. Like, the very first scene bothered me when they're by the pool and you've got Jenna Malone's character, Amy.
You say that with such disdain.
Like, it's just like... she was so disappointing. Like, she was less like...
Well, you leaned over to me when we realized who it was and you were like, oh, she should have just She should have. What did you say?
I said she should have just died and died. We should have
instead
Donnie.
of Donnie. And, yeah.
But anyways, yeah, her character really bothered me. How she's just this really like meek, very like wispy, high pitched, blah blah blah. Which maybe I shouldn't say too much about voices, but whatever. I'm gonna go there anyway because I feel like in Donnie Darko her voice was way more normal. But maybe she doesn't have as much lines. I don't know.
Maybe.
But even just when she was like her boyfriend who's going to be going into med school, so he's got some medical background, and he like makes him like, oh honey, like you're starting to burn up or something because she's got like white skin.
Yeah.
And she just makes, oh no, I'm just Flash. Like she like totally disregards him and just like everything about her character.
Well, then she goes and tries to hook up with the German guy on the beach just after that. And then and at this point, you don't know exactly how old these characters are supposed to be, but it's like early 20s. Mm-hmm. But she's just like super immature.
So immature.
The character. But yeah, so anyway, let's get into where, because once they're in the jungle, it does kick off, which I'm like, okay, sweet, because that's when everyone's waiting for that in these supernatural thrillers, horror movies. It's like, don't give me 25 minutes and then another slow build up to like what's happening once you get to your destination.
Yeah. So once we work through that, and there's like at least, well, anyways, I'm not going to get into any more of that, but anyways, so we get into this whole trip into the jungle.
Yeah.
It literally seems to take like 10 minutes.
Well,
it's not really far off the beaten trail.
Yeah, the guy baits them into this, being like, "Oh yeah, these are ruins not on the tourist route, right?" But yeah, they take a bus and then they hop in a cab, and then they're there. Basically, they have another little bit of a hike.
The chick's wearing flip flops.
Yeah, she's wearing classic, right? So yeah, that's kind of fun.
They're not even wearing hats.
No, they're not even.
No protection.
Nobody's prepared at all.
No.
But of course, they don't know exactly what they're getting into. But still, it's like you're in Mexico. You're heading into the jungle. Like you should probably put some closed-toed shoes on.
Probably.
But they get to the edge of where they have to get out of the car and then walk into the jungle, and they see the Jeep. So I'm forgetting the German fellow's name now in the movie. It
Heinrich?
was his brother's name was Heinrich. Matthias, I think, is his name was, right?
That's it.
So Matthias spots his brother's Jeep, and it's kind of disheveled, right?
Yep.
Like it's sort of looking like almost like it's been rusted out already, even though it's only been a day, just from the humidity. It just looks like it's dirty, like it looks like it's been left. You know what I mean? Abandoned. Mm-hmm. And he kind of has this bit of an expression about it on his face, and he's like, "Yeah, like that's my brother's Jeep," and nobody else at all even notices.
Clueless.
At all.
Mm-hmm. So they just continue on their way, trekking into the jungle, and then before you know it, lo and behold, they come across these impressive ruins, and they seem to be, like we said, like basically a hop, skip, and a jump away from the road, which is sort of confusing.
Not
again, once you start to unravel the plot a little bit more, because essentially what happens is they get trapped by these Mayans.
Yeah.
This group of, I don't even know what you want to call them, if they're like caretakers of this tree, or tree, sorry. It's not a tree, it's a plant. It's a
or is it?
Plant.
We'll get into that.
I don't even know what it is. It's a big old thing. But essentially, this thing has commandeered the temple.
Yeah.
Which, another aspect that I didn't really think about, but was quite interesting as far as like, like the bait and actually going down. Because essentially what you get is this big old pyramid.
Yes.
And then there's a hole at the very top, right?
Yeah.
It's an opening, and then you have to drop down, presumably.
Right.
And that's where the plant usually ensnares its victims, but of course it's covering the entire outside as well. So there's bodies riddled all over the place. But I actually didn't think about this, but it's very smart of like the Mayans to just wait it out, right? Because they know either they're going to die of exposure and the plant will get them, or they'll drop down into the trap and essentially...
Right.
And there is a trap. Because the one thing that I really liked about this movie was the plant.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
No, it's a very cool concept.
Yeah.
This idea of there being... essentially, it's sentient. It can think.
Yeah, it seems to be able to move quite fast.
And it can move quickly. That was the other thing about it, too. Mm-hmm. So just to continue along the narrative here, and of course, once again, we should say this at the beginning every time. Everyone should know this by now. Watch the movie before you listen to these shows of ours.
Yeah.
But... So they're trapped on this pyramid. They're surrounded by these indigenous peoples in this one, presumably small little pocket of the jungle where they're kind of hanging out protecting this temple. And so that's a question we were talking about after. It's like, well, are they protectors of this temple, or do they just live nearby and know that if things touch it, they need to do something about it?
Super dangerous. Yeah, are they like the keepers of this temple?
So, but then you're sorry, go on.
No, continue your thought.
I was just gonna say, like, so if that's the case, if they're just kind of sticking nearby to make sure things don't get too out of control, then build a fence. Put
up some signs.
And of course they say when they get there, like, oh, they don't speak Spanish, we can't communicate with them. I'm like, okay, it's fairly close to the road. Like, these people are going to speak Spanish for sure.
You think there'd be at least some pidgin going on? Like,
plus, they had the first guy who gets shot in the head was one of the locals. Like, he spoke Spanish.
Yeah,
and he wasn't able to communicate them either. But the point I'm making is, like, if they don't want anyone to touch this thing, they didn't do anything about it at all. It's like,
and another really huge I don't even know how to say this, but like basically a big undoer of the plot is because like essentially once you touch the plant or you're touched by it, you're dead to them. Like, you're just like no
contaminated.
Exactly, contaminated. And that's why they shoot their own kid.
Yeah,
because he gets the chick Jenna Malone throws the plant on him, and then he's one of them.
Yeah.
But one thing though that's interesting is that the phone, right? The phone element, how when they have that initial confrontation where that guy, the local, gets shot, he's trying to hold up the phone, right?
Yeah, or the camera. The phone.
It's the phone
right.
with the photo on it. And then he says, once they run back up, because they obviously are terrified because he gets shot in the head, once they run back up, they realize, oh wait, no, the guy, the native Mayan guy took the phone. Well, that's a point of contamination. If he actually took the phone, unless it was just dropped.
That's
but
they
do say that specifically.
He does say that.
So that to me is
that's a good question. I don't remember that
scene,
him actually physically taking it. I don't recall that.
Because he was quite close, right? And so I think maybe they shot him because he was getting so close, but I didn't actually see that exchange myself, but maybe if we watched it again.
So just to go back quickly to that other, you just mentioned there, like how they, Amy, the character, she pulls the plant off because she's all mad and she's like, why won't you help us? And throws it out and it hits the kid.
Such an entitled American.
And so they turn around, and I shouldn't be laughing really, but then they turn around and they shoot this kid in the head because they're like, well, now you're contaminated too. Why is this kid this is just like a 9-year-old kid hanging out at the front lines of this like temple that's going to kill you on touch? Like, that is some very poor parenting right there. Like, you're just like, why are you there? Dumb. Doesn't make any sense. Dumb. It's just for dramatic effect for the narrative, obviously, right?
And you get the wailing mother
they
in
had
the
to shoot a child. Yeah, the wailing mother who's like 2 feet away making soup on a fire. It's like, why don't you make that soup 50 feet away? Why are you this close? Like, do they need soup that readily? Like, right there, guarding this place? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. Andrew's going on a rant here.
A little bit.
Okay, continue.
All right. So, yes, a lot of frustration, a lot of really annoying character developments. I'm sorry. I'm just like thinking back.
Just a big sigh.
I'm just trying to come up with one. Okay, so let's jump back to where they initially hear the cell phone, because that to me is one of the most interesting aspects about this movie is the mimicry that this plant is able to convey.
Yes.
And it uses it as an intelligent trap, right?
Yeah.
And I really loved that scene, right, where the two girls go down. Matthias has already broken his legs or whatever.
He's fallen down trying to find it.
And they made it like 10 times worse by like crunching them, trying to lift him onto the stretcher thing, which was just awful. Why would you lift him that way? Why don't you lift him from the side? Like, cup him with both of your hands. Anyways, it seemed as if that was just really dumb. Really, really dumb. Maybe the medical student should have given them some pointers on that one.
Possibly.
Or just giving them another foot of rope, man. Come on. That was another point, too, actually, because if you think about it, they constructed this whole big stretcher thing out of the tent poles and other, like, sort of, like, backpack straps and belts and things.
Yeah.
And then they magically are able to lower it quite a significant distance lower than the blonde was actually able to be lowered on just a single, like, hoop. So that to me doesn't make sense. Where did they get all this extra rope?
Well, there's that. And then also, too, like they lower her down initially and she's not quite at the bottom. And then they're like, oh, can you jump? And she's like, and if I'm on that rope, I'd be looking up being like, that is the dumbest question I've ever heard in my, oh, sure. Yeah, I can. I'll just go ahead and jump down and then not be able to get back up just like this guy.
Yeah.
And then you can send the next person down for the same thing, and then the next person, then we can all hang out down here.
Exactly.
And not be able to get back up.
Confusing.
Great.
So anyway, so that was annoying, and I just thought about that right now. But anyways, getting back to what I initially was going to say with this whole scene where the two girls descend into the pit, and then they're continuously hearing the cell phone, right? And so they go through, like, basically multiple chambers, it looks like.
Yeah.
It's quite extensive, which is kind of interesting. And the whole time, right, they're basically in the plant's lair, except they aren't injured. Except for the blonde, though, actually. She does have this... She
gashed her leg.
Right, so she is already injured, so therefore she's more attractive, I would think, right? As far as, like, I'm assuming this plant has some sort of mechanism for smelling blood or something or
like that.
Sensing it to some degree, because it goes after Mateus, like, instantly as soon as his legs or whatever. But, that whole scene, right, when they have... when she finally realizes that stupid Amy person and she like looks and they're like, I loved that how they were like singing to her. It looked like it was like Alice in Wonderland.
The little what are those things called in the center of a flower? Like basically they look like the little saffron things that come out of the center, right? The little poppy.
I'm not a botanist. I don't know.
But and they're just vibrating, and it's, you know what's cool about that is like they realize that it sort of sounds like the phone, but not really. Mm-hmm. It's like the echo up through the chamber sounded like a cell phone, but as soon as they're there, it's just like. It's just like more of just a high-pitched sound that was totally a trick. That would be so the most disheartening thing in the whole world, obviously. How you're down and be like, oh, yeah, that's...
But then even more terrifying, right? Because all of a sudden you're realizing that a plant has entrapped you.
Yes.
And lured you down into the depths of this unknown ruin.
Right.
And that's when it starts to pick up, right? Like, all of a sudden the plant jumps to life and is like, boom. Like, you know, like, I honestly don't even... In my mind, I was kind of hoping one of them would go down at that point.
Yeah.
One of them should have, because in my mind, when I'm watching a horror movie, I want all the deaths to be very satisfying.
Yeah.
And even if I do like the character. And I will say that the secondary male character that wasn't the doctor, I can't remember his name.
He should have been first. He should have been first to go.
He should have been the first to go, yes. And his death was just so unsatisfying. It was just bad. It was BS, man. Like,
I totally agree. One of those girls should have been. Yeah, that would have made it more dramatic for sure. If one of them had to scramble back up and be like the other was taken away.
Yeah.
The only thing. Let's come back to the plant thing for a sec. When they're down there, you made the comment. You're like, why is there so much foliage? Right, so it's like, there's all these vines growing up over the inside of this temple, and they're all like fully splayed out. It looks like marijuana leaves, right? These fully splayed out green, lush green leaves, and it's like, no.
You don't need fan leaves.
You don't need fan leaves. You're not going to have anything green when there's no sunlight to be found, because you need sunlight to create whatever chlorophyll, right? You need that, right? So I'm thinking. And then the quick movement. That was the other thing that made me reconsider the idea that it's a plant. Because we know, like with Venus flytrap, with other things where there is movement, it's rapid, but it's almost like a loaded spring. And it's like a one-time motion. And then in order to move again, it takes a while to kind of reload that.
I liked the analogy to the hydraulic press and how it's silent, but so just like it's unstoppable once it starts. Exactly.
Yeah. So... the rapid movement when they're getting scrambled, when these vines are scrambling at them and stuff like that, almost make me think that this thing is parasitic. It looks like a plant, but it's actually a living parasite, and that's why it is just in this one central location. And you made the comment too, like, or the flowers. Why flowers? There's no bugs landing on this thing. There's no birds pollinating this thing.
It's just a trap.
It's just a trap.
A lure.
But I mean, the same sort of lures you find on plants and on insects and animals and parasites and stuff.
Bright colored, yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of, I don't even know. I wonder. Yeah.
I actually, that's a really good point. There were elements of this plan, though, that I thought they could have beefed up. Yeah. And I mentioned a few of them, like the idea that it could have been equipped with something like a stun spore mechanism. Like, you brush up against it and like a dust or a powder falls on you, you breathe it in, all of a sudden before you know it, you're paralyzed. And then it's much easier for the plant to actually consume you.
Definitely.
Because it can't move. What else could there have been? Like, it didn't have any spiky appendages. It didn't really have anything like that. All it was essentially, it looked like a network of veins and capillaries, like that are sort of hidden by the leaves and the flowers. And then essentially it would just like latch onto you, like it did repeatedly with that girl, and then again with Mateus with both of his legs. Yeah.
So I gotta ask you then. I'm gonna jump to that. Like, what was your most gruesome scene? Like, what scene do you think was most effective? It's a supernatural horror movie. What to you was effective, if we were trying to like give this movie some compliments here.
I liked it when Amy uncovered Mateus's legs, and then you realize like the extent of the damage that the plant has done to him. It's kind of just feeding off of him.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for the scene where they were killing, like, or sorry, not killing, they were chopping off his legs. I just didn't believe the conviction on the doctor, how he's like, we need to do this right now. It's just like, excuse me, buddy, I think you're taking yourself a little too much seriously.
Way too seriously. Dude, it's like, dude, okay, you're concerned about infection, yet you want to hack this guy's leg off. All you have is a hunting knife and a bottle of tequila. Mm-hmm. You don't think there's going to be more chance of infection after that?
Exactly, yeah. Stupid.
Obviously.
Really dumb.
But he wasn't teed up to be the character that's just making these brash decisions either. So it's not like he would, you know, where he would be like, oh, well, yeah, we expected that from him because he's trying to play the hero doctor role or whatever, because we didn't get enough of that build-up.
No.
You get that little bit of a mention about how, oh, he's going to be a doctor. Like Amy makes that one comment on the beach or something. That's it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this before, how we thought, like, hey, this movie is based off of a book, the same name, The Ruins, and we haven't read it, but I'm assuming it reads better than the screenplay ended up working out. The author of the book wrote the screenplay too, though, which is kind of like, which I was surprised at, to be totally honest, because we both thought that this would be so much more effective if the characters were like introduced to this in a more, like, they're more invested in it, like they're on an archaeological expedition, or the actual one of the four has a sibling that's a part of the expedition and is more invested and is, maybe he's a botanist and not just a doctor, so he's got some ideas about, whoa, this is weird, what can this be, I'm trying to figure it out. Some
sort of archaeological dig, something that would connect them, like to say the mythologies, to the history of the area, to say the folklore surrounding perhaps stories of this plant, and then on top of it, something exactly, more expertise involved in actual like plants and botany, so they can maybe explain or attempt to explain some of the things that are happening. Very similar to, it's slipping my mind now, the one, the Void, no, not The Void, sorry, we haven't watched that one, The Thing. Right, where she goes up because she's an expert and they need her expertise to come up, and so she's already, you know, like, she's in a position of authority. It's not as if they're just thrown into this just willy-nilly. Like, I feel like that's just it's like, it's too generic and it's too easy.
Totally. And it's like, those types of movies, like, and those types of plot lines, like, can be effective on occasion, where all of a sudden, whap, like, slap in the face, we're in this situation. You know, well,
that's exactly what happened with The Ritual, right?
Yeah, at the beginning of the movie,
but it was effective. Yeah,
but it was more effective. It was much more.
The characters were realer. The dialogue was better. Yeah. You didn't hate any of them really. Well, you kind of hated Dom,
I guess,
but not all of them. It's all like you were just like, hey, the very thing that I really didn't like about this movie that I'll just mention right now. Actually, maybe I should save it till the very end.
Okay, save it for the very end, because I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Did you have any, like, what's next on our little list here of our...
Well, we kind of just, like, we've already talked about a lot of the specificities or moments of note within the film. Is there any ones that we haven't sort of touched upon that you think we should?
I'm trying to remember some of the other bones that I had to pick, to be honest. I think I've sort of mentioned the big ones, like the foliage on the inside, the... just like the poor character development at the beginning. Like, it basically just felt like the beginning of a like a teenager spring break film. You know what I mean?
That's
like a 14A cheesy, like, you know, I can't even think of an example, but like that's what it felt like. And then all of a sudden, slap, we're in this horror movie. Well, I didn't feel that way before they ended up on top of these ruins. Like, they didn't instill enough sense of something really weird is going on here.
Totally.
And they and I guess that is like what I already mentioned, where they pass the Jeep and it's just nonchalant. You know, they're surrounded by these people at the base of the temple, but we're not really given any reason why or at all. And then the people, they're all just standing there with their guns, and then they're just there. It's
one other thing that I will mention right now that really I didn't appreciate about this film was that literally the plant is responsible for one death. And everyone else dies at the hands of someone else. Right? The only person it kills is Mateus, right? It just chokes him out and he's done.
Yeah.
And then with the with the dude, I can't even remember his name, the secondary male character.
Eric.
Eric, he just gets stabbed by his girlfriend.
Which was
and
so
then his
unsatisfying.
girlfriend gets stabbed by the doctor. And then the doctor gets shot with a bunch of arrows. And then the girl that everyone hates throughout the whole movie gets away.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, that bugged me. Because the thing I was waiting for the whole movie was for it to go 180 back to the very beginning scene where there was a girl that very much looked like Jenna Malone.
Yeah.
It was quite dark in the scene, though. And she's basically like, help me. And she's in, like, this dark whatever, and then she just gets, like, taken. Yeah. Like, did the plant take her?
Yeah, it did, of course, because then that's the body they find. When they're down in the when the two girls are down below and they see like that body that's kind of like writhing around in the reeds and it's like half decomposed.
It's a girl? Oh, I thought it was a man.
It was like long hair, so I'm presumably that was the girl from the first scene.
Okay. Oh shoot. Yeah, because I was waiting for that the whole time and it didn't happen.
It was very quick and like not very satisfying. So I'm not surprised you missed it because it was just like there was no dramatic thing where they find, like, it would have been more, that would have been better too, where they go into a cavern or into one of the rooms and they're still hearing the phone, but they come across like a corpse that's being eaten by the plant, and they're all of a sudden the horror washes over them, but they're still, and then that's when she turns and sees the phone, sees the flower mimicking the phone. Instead, they see the body after the plants are starting to kind of go crazy and start to chase after them, and then it sort of like unearths itself from beneath the vines, and it's like, oh no, we're already scared because there's a plant chasing us, and oh, there's a body there too. It's like a freaking Disneyland ride. They're just having like a bunch of stuff thrown at them all. Where's the killer clown? Comes out around the corner to scare them too. Like, like.
I know, yeah. They should have had a killer clown though.
Might as well have.
That would spice things up.
The other thing, too, is that it's just so superfluous for the location. Like, the whole link to, like, Mayan ruins, and it's called The Ruins, and it's like the ruins themselves had nothing to do with anything at all.
There was no connection.
They didn't touch on any mythology or history from, I don't even know.
And you know what they could have done?
What?
They could have definitely spiced that aspect up a bit by, say, doing something like the Lost City of the Monkey God, where they came across that leishmaniasis disease. Like, what if that was sort of an element... So, like, that flesh-eating disease that kind of pops out of nowhere. Yeah. And is transferred through, like, mosquitoes and other bugs, right? If you get bit by a fly. Yeah, if you get bit by one of these flies, then you're basically toast. But, yeah, that was the reason that the main theorized reason why they left this white city was because of the leishmaniasis. Yeah. So they could have had some sort of similar origin story. So, like, the day that the plant took over. Another thing, too, it's a plant. Yeah. Why can't we burn this thing?
Yeah, that was another thing, too.
Why can't we... It's a stone temple. Why can't we light the whole thing on fire?
Yeah. Come on. These guys aren't thinking very... they're not thinking outside the box.
No.
They're thinking, let's just surround it when something... It's very reactionary.
Very reactionary. And maybe that, again, points to the idea that maybe they somehow worship this thing, perhaps, and they want people to come to it and be attracted and be sacrificed.
See, that is a very cool angle.
And it was never developed.
Give us some of that. Mm-hmm. Like, totally. Like, why this one temple? Like, that's the other thing too. Like, we talked about in our man-eating plants episode. It's like, okay, well, if you think there could be some sort of a man-eating plant, maybe it exists in one tiny little locale. Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes sense. But it's like, are there more in the story of the ruins? Are there other places where this same thing exists, or is it just this one place? And if that's the case, either you burn it because you don't want it, or you worship it and show us some cool shrine or something.
Exactly. And it's such a fast-growing and fast-moving vine. You would think it would have expanded far beyond the confines of that ruin.
You'd think it would have been able to take over everything, like something like the Thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because...
And you never know, right? Because you get those moments in the film where they're like, it's growing on us, it's on our clothes, it's on our bodies. Yeah. And then when the girl gets away in the end, Amy, it's like, well, is she taking that with her?
You're left to think that, like, it's going to spread. But if...
It's almost like a 28 weeks later.
If it spreads that easily from that, then... Yeah, how could it not spread via its roots, via its vines, via whatever?
Via a bird landing on it and then flying away.
Like, Jeff makes that comment at the beginning where he's like, oh, the insects and birds, it must be really old because everything's learned not to land on it. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. But obviously it's survived this long from eating stuff. Mm-hmm. So that part, from a biological, like, evolutionary perspective, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That it wouldn't be able to... that it is only in that one space.
Unless it is through controlled efforts by human populations. But again, right, if they're going to go that far, why wouldn't they just take it one step further and just eliminate the problem?
Yeah.
So I got a question, Andrew.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this film?
No. I probably wouldn't. Like, if you have nothing else to watch, it's not bad. Like, it's not a bad movie.
If you're sick, if
I'm giving it like a 6.5 out of 10. Like, it's not bad. It's got a really cool concepts to it that are fun to play with when you watch it, and you can have discussions like this.
Yeah.
But in terms of entertainment value compared to the first, how many have we done now? 3, 4? The first,
this is our
compared to The Ritual, compared to The Witch, compared to those ones where you also have things that are relatively simplistic but delivered way better. Delivered the horror factor is cranked to 11 on all those other movies.
Yeah.
This wasn't a scary movie.
No.
And the gore factor wasn't there either. It was pretty bad.
It was poor. Like the one scene that you were just like waiting for some like juicy gore with the girl because she's got the knife and she's cutting herself apart.
Yeah.
And it's stupid. She's got like one little scratch on her forehead and one on her leg and one on her arm. It's like, I want like Mason Verger, like your eyeballs hanging out of your frickin' head.
Absolutely.
And, like, you know, like
you already went to rated R. You might as well. What did they? They just chinsed out on their makeup artist, I guess.
Yeah, they totally did.
But like, like I don't know. So I mean, overall, I wouldn't recommend it over other movies, but for at least getting the conversation started about like this type of biology and like scary stuff like that, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where I'm at with this one. That's where I'm at with The Ruins overall. What about you? Recommending it? Same boat.
Can't say I would. Like I watched it.
You did watch it. Your eyes were open.
I wouldn't watch it again. But it's like, I'll give it a 5 out of 5.5 out of 10.
Let me ask you this. Do you think someone could, write a very similar plot line and remake something along the same lines and have it be more effective after this has already been released?
Well, every one of our suggestions would have made it way better.
I know, but if we went back and redid, I guess you'd really have to tweak it, make it a lot different, but...
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
I think even if it was based off of one of those scientists that we covered in those explorers in the Man-Eating Plants episode, that would be cool.
Oh, that would be kind of cool, actually. Yeah. Ooh, maybe a screenplay coming at you guys from Into the Portal. Who knows?
Who knows?
Cool. Well, let us know what you guys thought of this movie.
Totally.
You can hit us up all the usual spots. You can email us intotheportalmailbox@gmail.com or come on the Facebook forum, just at Into the Portal Podcast on Facebook, and then just click the group. And join us on there. There's more people every day, so it's super fun.
Totally.
And always on Twitter and Instagram too. So I'm very curious to see what people thought, because I think some people probably really liked this movie. So I hope we didn't ruin your day by crapping all over it. But
come on, there's definitely some points where you can.
I think that all our points we made were valid, unprovoked. You know what I mean? They're very valid critiques. Well,
Jinx there.
Jinx, oh, you're stretching. That means we're coming down to the end here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much again for listening to this week's episode of Film Friday. And I think I asked you this last week too, but I'm always forgetting. Do you know what we're covering next week, or will we just release that on Sunday?
We were considering The Void, but we haven't actually pegged that down.
Okay.
There's been a lot of recommendations, so we'll just kind of comb through them and get at you on Sunday.
Sounds good. Okay, so we'll let you guys know on in a couple days for on our regular episode, and until then.
Until then.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can Check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.